this is an illusion. Like, this is like a manufactured style of living that we have all consented to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best for us or that it's even really real. We're just participating in it. All right. Hello. Welcome to episode 5 of The Cost of Curiosity. So today we are exploring the concept of time and the implication of how we spend it. Cool. So I'm going to start with a story that changed the trajectory of my life. So it's 2022, Christmas time. I had just graduated from chiropractic school and I was at home visiting my parents for Christmas after just starting my first big girl job. I'm a chiropractic associate. I'm a contributor to society, right? I've gone to school for a decade and I'm finally um, a, a grown up. And so we are at dinner, and my parents were giving each other a hard time about not doing the thing that they feel each other should do, right? But the reason why they feel that way is because that thing is the thing that that person wants to do. I know that didn't make sense. My dad, for feels like millennia, has been talking about writing a book. And my mom has been struggling with her health, getting healthy. So that was their goal. They were like, in 2 years, my mom is going to have her health under control and my dad is going to have written his book. Cool. And so I was like, I want to make a goal. And so I was like thinking, and I was like, okay, in 2 years, I want to be seeing 80 patients a day. And my dad goes, your goal is to work your ass off for the rest of your life? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, like, of course it is, like, that's kind of like the plan is you go to school and then you graduate and then you work really hard at the thing that you went to school for. Like, just like, yes, of course. And like, even more so, like 80 was easy. With the crew that I was being raised up in, the goal was like 300 patients a day. They would stand up there and be like, I've seen 1,000 patients a day. I've seen 12 or a week, sorry, 1,200 a week, right? Like mass numbers of getting people under chiropractic care, like, was the goal. So I was like, yeah, 80's easy. And then I was like, okay, well, Dad, what would you have my goal be if not to work hard for the rest of my life? And he said, to find joy. What? That's way better. Right? I was like, okay, let me think about that, And honestly, from that moment on, I have been doing that, and I've let that be a leading force in my decision making, is finding joy. And so that led to a year of working as an associate, growing an amazing practice, serving a lot of people, making a lot of friends, living on my own for the first time ever, being an adult. And then it led me into moving home and starting my own practice for 2 years and creating what I feel like I was supposed to create from scratch, which has also been a blast. And I've loved every second of it. And now changing gears again into doing something more exciting by finding joy. So, so that part right there, that part of working every day for the rest of my life, right? That is how we're kind of taught to spend our time. Like that is what success looks like. That's how we get there. So that's what I kind of want to talk about today. So there are two main types of time. Chronos, which is the chronological time, the future, the past, days, hours, what we think of how we as humans exist on this earth is through chronological chronos time. And it's measurable. Whereas Kairos is this other type of time where it's not necessarily something you measure, but it's something you recognize. It's presence, it's quality. And here's kind of an example of the tangible difference, right? So, have you ever had a conversation with a person where they are actually actively engaged in the conversation, holding that space for you, right? They want to listen to what you're saying, they want to truly understand where you're coming from, versus the person who's like just trying to say the next, like get the next thing that's in their mind out, right? Like you can feel that difference, and that's kind of the difference between Kairos, and it's also described as like God's timing. And funny enough, I thought that my name was named after Kairos. My name is Carissa. I thought that the root word was Kairos, like God's timing. It's not. I've always known that it's a gift of grace, but the Greek word is actually charis, not Kairos. Anyway, fun little fact about myself. So, so Kairos is like that present time consciousness, God's timing, opposite of like the chronological time. So, me and Tom yesterday were having a conversation about kind of like the fake rhythm that we've created that we all have agreed to live by in America. Right? And what I mean by that is like the work schedule, right? So we on in average work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and that is a contributing member to society. You're working your 40 hours. Working more than that is almost glorified, right? It's seen as ambitious. If you're busy, then you are successful, right? You are making more money. All of these things come with having a really intense like work schedule. And but it's kind of arbitrary, right? It's just like that is the level that we have all kind of agreed to in America, and it may seem crazy to other countries. Some countries are even crazier, right? So Tom mentioned to me how in China they have a 996 instead of a 955, right? So they start work at 9 in the morning until 9 p.m. for 6 days a week. What? Like, could you imagine if like that was the standard? I would not be able to keep up. so so this standard that we've created, it's created our hustle culture, right? It's our level of success. And I think it has started to play a little bit of a negative role on our health. And hear me out. Because of this rhythm that we have to keep up with in order to honestly survive, you we don't really have the convenience of being able to listen to our bodies, right? Like when we are sick, we are immediately going to the doctor, taking antivirals, taking whatever we need to so we can get back to work because we have to get back the next day. Like there is no time to rest and be sick and heal. And I think it's kind of severed that communication between our minds and our bodies. And it's just one example of many of how there's a lot of potentially negative effects from this constant urgency to keep going and not really rest, right? Like we have a cycle of productivity that looks like, right, like it's you just keep going until you kind of retire, right? Like that's the end goal, and then you're done. And that's it's not like natural, right? Like it's like a positive feedback loop versus where everything else in nature is a negative feedback loop. Like you have a stimulus and then it goes back and forth, where a positive feedback loop is like you just keep going until it explodes. And it's artificial, right? Like it's an artificial agreement that we've made that we all want to be a part of. And so we're laughing about it. And one of the effects of this, I believe, that have come from this like hustle culture is that our worth and our identity is equivalent to what we produce. You can just think about that for a little bit, right? And less about really anything else. And so we were talking, and I was hypothesizing, right? So from my paradigm, I believe that there is a creator who divinely orchestrated our earth into a beautiful, like perfectly designed, it's orderly, right? And so I was like, if my theory is true, right? Like, if that's the case, then this same creator, like, he probably would have communicated to the humans how much we should work versus how much we should play and how much we should enjoy, right? Like, I wonder if that's explicitly or even implicitly written down in his book. And I was like, and if it's not in the Bible, then my second guess would be that the Eastern philosophers have figured it out. Right? And so I kind of want to explore what I found while looking into that. So, so most Christians know that it starts right off of the jump. Genesis, the first book, chapters 1 and 2, right? Like, God himself is creating the world, and he's creatively creating the world for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, what does he do? He rests. So he's implicitly putting that as a part of the rhythm in which we do and in which we be from like the onset of creation, which I thought was cool. And if you look at the lifestyle of ancient cultures, specifically in the early church, right, it's we're working with our hands, we're sharing resources, we are gathering together, and we are resting. And it's interesting, right? So like, if I were to look at the people closest to me and how this rhythm has affected their lives, right? So my sister is like the epitome of success in regards to hustle culture. Like, she has built an empire, multiple empires. She's a badass. And she's honored and glorified for it, which she should be. She has worked so hard to get to where she is in her level of success and level that she's done for humanity, right? Like, everyone, like, we all work hard to be at the level as my sister. But about a year ago, she got sick. She got this like very rare cancer, like 1 in 5 million, like ridiculously rare. And so that shocked the system of like, what is happening? And my initial interpretation was, you have to rest, right? Like, you can't keep going at this pace forever. It's unsustainable. And I didn't really know how to articulate it. I didn't really know what the solution was. I didn't really know how you get to that place, right? I was just like, it just feels like this is unsustainable. Like, it just makes sense that your body eventually would be like, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Right? This is a warning sign that I cannot keep working at this pace indefinitely. And it was not necessarily received well. But again, I didn't have a game plan. I didn't really know what it looked like. I was just like, you got to slow down, you know? And so it wasn't actually until she was at church and the preacher was preaching on rest. And he said, it's actually a commandment, right? It's one of the commandments is that you take the Sabbath where you slow down intentionally and reflect and spend time with me and spend time with, right? Like, you do nothing. And so that kind of then clicked for her, and it was interesting, right? So that's a part of the creator paradigm, is there is a day of rest. And then in the Eastern philosophy, it's there's this idea called Wu Wei. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but it's alignment with creation versus conquering. And if we think about our like modern capitalistic world today, we boss ass conquerors, right? Like we we generate plenty, we hoard plenty, we create plenty, even often at the expense of others, right? And it sometimes creates mentalities that aren't necessarily the best. I am not here to demonize capitalism by any means, but there are specific outcomes that come from like that type of mindset. And America is the kind of like the best at that, like the epitome of what that looks like. And so in the Eastern philosophies, they see this like overworking, this increased overproduction as an imbalance, just straight off of the jump. And I love the way that it's expressed here that productivity without presence is illusion. And I feel like that is what me and Tom were feeling yesterday when we were talking about this, is like, this is an illusion. Like, this is like a manufactured style of living that we have all consented to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best for us or that it's even really real. We're just participating in it. And I think that that's such an interesting way to think about it, right? So productivity, you can see that as the chronos, like an imbalanced chronos without the kairos, without being present. It's just an illusion. And we're all just like pretending. So anyway, thought that that was interesting. But in conclusion, the overall generalized rhythm of that's implicit more so than explicit in the Bible when it comes to like how we live, there are 4 main phases. How cool is this? The first one is work creatively, right? We see that even in God. He worked creatively for 6 days. Then the next one is to trust provisions, trusting that what we've planted is going to grow and bear fruit, trusting the higher power than self, even trusting self, right? Like trust provisions. The next is rest intentionally, intentionally slow down, intentionally spend time not working, healing, recovering, right? And then the last one is return to presence regularly, checking yourself to get back into that kairos. And when I read those 4 main points, I was like, that beautifully parallels seasons. You know, working creatively is the summer, like planting seeds. Trust provisions is the harvest of the fall. Rest intentionally is when we slow down into winter time, and return to presence regularly is living in the abundance of spring. And it's like, yes, it's sprinkled beautifully throughout our entire creation. And we can either, like the Eastern philosophers say, align with creation and work with it, or we can manipulate and conquer it. And I think that beautifully working with it is, I don't know, it just seems so like duh, like simple. It's better for us and for nature. And it makes me think of like AI. So I used to have this belief, this thought rather, that like the way that we heal as a human race and as a species on this earth is to kind of like go back to those more like ancient times, like get rid of all the food dyes, all of the everything, and go back to like what we know worked. But then when AI hit, I was like, we cannot go back. We can never go back. Like we are progressing, like we are moving forward. We are in a new, it's like this is a revolution, right? So it's like we can either adapt the best we can and utilize AI as a tool, or something else can happen. And I was doing some research actually on the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of God here on America. I mean, here in the world now. I'm getting a little off script and tangenty here, but I realize that it's not necessarily a returning to or an unlearning, but it's an integration, right? It's working with these new modalities and tools to create a new evolution of life that we haven't really been able to tap into yet. So just a little tidbit on not necessarily forcing ourselves into that artificial progression of continuously producing and producing and producing, right? But rather integrating the help of artificial intelligence into our rhythm of nature, of spring into fall, or summer into fall, into winter, into spring, and healthily integrating all of that into new life. So cool. I'm gonna keep going. Um, so that the seasons in my mind is the proper chronos, right? Is the proper chronological time of how we should work and live, right? A balance between all of these different things versus prioritizing just working all of the time. Right. So what does our boy Jesus say? What does our boy Jesus say? Jesus may not necessarily pick up that this is what he's talking about in this time, but this is how I interpreted it. So in Luke 10, verse 38, Jesus visits Martha and Mary. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all of the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all of these details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." Okay, let's break that down, right? So if I were to look at modern culture in America, I would say that most of the women that I know crush being Marthas, right? Like going around serving, doing at the expense potentially of their own health, right? Like we have created a culture of production, right? We have to meet all of the needs. We have to do and do and do and do. And and Jesus actually says quite the opposite, right? He says, actually, what's the most important thing is presence first. What's Mary doing? Mary is sitting at his feet, doing nothing, being present with him. And the takeaway that I got from this was that presence is the key. First, we get present and we rest. And then from there, from that heart posture, we can then serve and we can then do. And then it's easier to have proper boundaries, right? Versus our value being in production. Our value instead is potentially in presence. And so that's the conclusion here, right? Is that your identity is not in your production, and that you are enough in and of yourself to stop and be. I think of the story of my mom. My mom is an amazing Martha, right? And she is so honored for that, right? Like she will always show up and do and give and serve, and she is a great woman of God. But from the way that I see things, I see it taking a toll on her health. And I urge her continuously to try to get more present. But if you don't know what that looks like or how you do that, right, that's hard to do. And so like I mentioned earlier, my mother is struggling through a very serious cancer diagnosis. However, we do have a praise report that her tumors are shrinking. Praise the Lord. But before we got that news, she was taking care of a homeless man, trying to get him housing, trying to get him a PO box, like doing all this stuff, rushing all around. And at the end of the day, she came and she told me this story about this gentleman. And she was like, he was telling me that I need to anoint myself every day and that the Lord wants me to live because this ministry needs me. And my father needs me, or her husband needs me, and the ministry needs her. And I looked at her and I said, I agree that the Lord wants you to live, but you could do not a single thing else for that ministry, and you would still deserve to live. For your presence alone on this earth is worthy enough, right? Like, this earth is better with your presence here, even if you do nothing else. And that is such a foreign concept for, honestly, most every adult. But very much so, I would say, women and mothers that have just been serving and giving their entire lives. And so, um, I think the next question that is begged to be asked is like, how do we rest? And I think that is worth exploring on your own, with your friends, with family that you trust, like trying to figure out what that looks like. But something that I've found in my own journey in that is that that's explicitly what the Bible says Jesus is. He is our rest. And I've never really interpreted him as that before until recently, until looking into all of these things. Matthew 11:28. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." like I don't know if that is how we describe Jesus, our Savior, these days, is that actually when we spend time with him, it rests our souls, right? We can abide in him. How cool. So, in conclusion, an imbalanced chronological focus on the future and the past and productivity and deadlines and on and on and on, I think concludes none other than a scarcity mindset that it potentially, like, it creates an us versus them. It creates a I must hoard. There's not enough. I have to keep working and striving for more and more and more. Versus a balanced Kairos is abundance. I've got one more verse and I've got one more thing to blow your mind, and then I'll get out of here. Again, Matthew 6:31. 34, sorry. "So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today." It's a heart posture. It's a presence. And then get this fact. to once again explode the scarcity mindset that I think that we are manufactured into believing. The sun, the star that we orbit, it creates enough energy that we could harness as humans to create enough energy for the entire human race to live off of for a year in one day. There is enough. There is plenty, right? Like, we do not have to keep working and working and working and working. That is coming from something else. And I'm not here to try to pretend what it is, why we're doing this, what the manipulation is. But I am here to offer an idea that we don't have to necessarily consent to it. We can trust, we can flow in the alignment of creation and trust that provisions will be made. And be present. All right, cool. That's it. I'll see y'all next week.